All right, so both my arms are now jointed. They're jointed opposite of each other, so I have one of each arm. That's really important. So now we're going to attach it to the body. So you're going to take your body piece, so it's facing you. So your stitches will probably look cleanest on the part that's facing you. And you're going to turn it around. So now we're looking at the back. At this point, I know in the tutorial it has you eyeball it, but just for ease, I'm going to show you what I do. Is I'm going to measure from center, so this corner is center, about 1.5 inches down, and place a dot. And on the other side, you'll see it's 1.5 inches to center as well. Okay, so when you put your arms at the dot, you'll see the shoulders come just below the neck. You don't want it too high up to the neck, or it'll look like the doll's shrugging. So I like it a little bit lower, just slightly lower than where the head will rest. So what we're going to do at this point is take your awl, just like you did before, and make your holes sorry, in your fabric. So it's really important that we're only going through the back of the fabric. It's just right behind the seam. Now, a little tip that if the fleece doesn't want to let go, I will sometimes just pick at it, so then the chopstick can get through. So I would repeat that on both sides. Now I find sometimes I have to pick a bit at the fleece because it doesn't like to push through as easily. But your point is to stretch the fabric instead of ripping it or cutting it. So I now have 2 armholes at the back of my body. You can see them both here. And I like to start on the far side away from the opening. And I'm going to put one of my arm joints into the hole. You might have to manipulate it a little bit. And now at this point, you'll take your needle and thread. I know this seems like overkill, so if it's really hard for your fingers to reach this, I think it'll be okay if you omit this step. I still like to do it just for my own security because my kids are really rough on dolls. They like to hold them by their arms. So like in the tutorial, I'm just going to do a little running stitch around the armhole. I've seen many dolls that the joints aren't secured, and I've heard many horror stories about how the arms ripped right off. My girls would be really upset if their doll's arm ripped off. So I assume anyone who buys my dolls would also be upset with the arm ripping off. So this one's a little bit harder. This is the main reason for this, is just to ensure that the fabric doesn't let go. But once again, if you're finding this really difficult, this may be an overkill step. If that happens to you, just here, you can just loosen it that way. I'm nothing if not conservative in how I'm teaching, so I'm trying to make sure that I'm not missing any steps, and I really encourage you to do this part. Back at the start, and I'm going to tie it off. And snip the end of the thread. But at this point, You can see my ends there. It's secure. So I'm going to take my flat washer, rounded side. One side should be slightly rounded. I put that against the fabric. So I'm going to slide that in over top of the joint. I'll show you as soon as I get it on. Like so. So you can see it in there. It's really hard to show you. And then the next one is you're going to put the locking washer on. I click it once or twice before I slide it in. Once it's slid in, make sure that the skin isn't caught up, and you're going to lock it. Okay, so then you can repeat on the next arm, and then when we get back, we're going to start filling.